I will not be shamed out of discussing this by people who say it's slut shaming or it's not relevant. It is relevant when a young candidate tries to sleep her way into politics and into power. And that is what it appears Kamala Harris did when she was a young political aspirant in San Francisco, when she had an affair with a man 30 years older than she was. She was 29 to 30 and he was 60, Willie Brown, who was like the godfather of San Francisco politics and very well known. And sure enough, that relationship paid dividends for her in more ways than one.
That's right, Megyn. As you noted yesterday, it's completely fair game to talk about Willie Brown. It's how Kamala Harris went from a relatively unknown Alameda County prosecutor to the forefront of San Francisco social life and politics. Willie Brown was the most powerful politician in California when Kamala Harris started dating him. And he also gave her a number of positions. We're talking about $400,000 back in the 1990s. That's almost $800,000 in today's money. He appointed her to those positions that paid her lucratively. He gave her the keys to a BMW, and he went around the most powerful and most wealthy circles of San Francisco and California politics with Kamala Harris on his arm, opening up the doors to her professional and political future.
So it was back when, again, she was 30 years old. He was at the time Democratic Speaker of the California State Assembly, quoting here from a Washington Examiner piece, which is very good. The position that he gave her on the California Medical Assistance Commission in 1994 paid at that time over $70,000 a year, which is about $120,000 in current money. And she served on the board until 1998, so about 4 years. That medical commission met twice a month. So for 2 meetings a month, she was getting the equivalent of $120,000. And you know why Democrats in San Francisco were mad about it? It wasn't because she wasn't qualified, which she wasn't. It was because those positions are supposed to be saved for only the most prized Democrats who Willie Brown really owed favors to, who did really, amazing things to keep Willie Brown in power. But instead, he gave one to his lover. He was, by the way, still married, though he was reportedly estranged from his wife for a long time. This was technically an extramarital relationship. And they were mad that he gave one of his choice grifting positions, not to somebody who'd done a lot for Democratic politicians, but to Kamala Harris. And not just that, there was another one. He gave her a second position as well, which was basically the same kind of deal, where he just gave her an appointment. She reeked in tons of money, and boom, Bob's your uncle. She was off to the races in Dem politics. And then Willie Brown is on record as saying, I also then helped her with her next big position, which was becoming San Francisco DA.
Right. When she ran for district attorney, they had broken up. Willie Brown, as soon as he ran and won the San Francisco mayor election, he broke up with Kamala. And then, Kamala was there for the victory party. But by the time the inauguration hit, his estranged wife reappeared to be holding the Bible while he took the oath of office. And Kamala was kind of pushed aside. But Willie Brown didn't forget her. When Kamala decided to run for district attorney of San Francisco, he was there quietly nudging all of his wealthy donors and powerful connections to help her out. Him and Terrence Holland, the existing district attorney, were not friends anymore. They had kind of had an ugly clash. And Kamala Harris likewise tried to overthrow Holland's second in command, but failed miserably. And so she ended up leaving the office to kind of plot her revenge. So Willie Brown was definitely there behind the scenes, but Kamala Harris did as much as she could before the election to distance herself from Willie Brown. At one point, doing a very long interview with San Francisco magazine, throwing him under the bus entirely, saying, Willie Brown's career is over. He's done. Hello. My turn is here. It's Kamala Harris. Sounds really familiar, Megyn, compared to what just happened last weekend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole Democratic Party is going to be stepping all over Joe Biden momentarily. He's going to get his weekend in the sun about what a lion he is. And then as soon as they realize that they can blame everything on him and take it off of Kamala, that's what they're going to do. Every inflation number you've seen, it's all his fault. She didn't touch it. She was just a lowly vice president. What was she supposed to do? But talk to me a little bit about her background, because if she rose in San Francisco and then California, right, as the attorney general, and then became a U.S. senator from California, all she's had to do is compete, for the most part, I know there's some exceptions, against other liberals, right? Like, has she ever had to compete against a bull, like Donald Trump, like the silverback gorilla, like Donald Trump, Republican versus Dem? It's on. I realized that she ran as the vice president, but she wasn't the chief. That was really Joe Biden's fight.
Well, the interesting race is when she ran against Steve Cooley for the attorney general position in 2010. Cooley was a relatively sensible law and order Republican from Los Angeles, and really the last meaningful Republican in California politics. And even it was a big year for Democrats. They won by double digits for California Democrats. But Kamala Harris really struggled against Steve Cooley and barely edged out a victory. It looked like the night of the election that she had lost. And lo and behold, weeks later, they did recounts and recounted all the rest of the votes, and she just barely squeaked off a victory. It was really close, and you can definitely look at that campaign and see that maybe she will be competitive in this race against Donald Trump as well. But it's hard to see that happening.
Some are now trying to excuse her awkwardness, repeated and everywhere, as she lost her footing as vice president and didn't have the confidence required to really be herself, which I guess is this secret version of charming. Is there anything in her past that would shed light on what's true about her? Has she always been awkward like this, with the weird laughing and the inappropriate jokes and every time the failed attempts at profundity?
Yeah, a lot of it's the product of being a California politician, right? When you're a California Democrat, all you have to do is impress the donors, impress the political power brokers, and kind of show up and demand a seat at the table. Willie Brown taught her how to do that. So she did have some level of that with the top donors, but she never really connected with the California people. But as we've shown earlier, you don't necessarily need to convince voters. You just need to convince the Democratic Party, and everything will fall in line for you pretty well. So
Boy, that pattern repeated itself. Sorry, keep going, Charlie.
Yeah. And so the same thing happened when she ran for Senate. She's a very good candidate. She's very disciplined. She loves the sort of the knife fighting and the brawling. She's on the record saying she loves California politics because it's a real fight. So she is a sort of a ruthless politician, a ruthless campaigner. But after taking office, there's definitely a drop down. Once you actually have to do the job, she never seemed to take it seriously and spent more time planning for her next job. That's kind of what we saw in the first 3 years of her vice presidency. She really was risk averse, didn't seem to be interested in the job she had, but more interested in protecting her own political brand for the future. And I think when a politician hits that stage, the early stage of actually having to do the job, I think that's when they tend to lose their footing and stumble. And I think that's what Kamala Harris ended up looking like. And that's why her staff kind of abandoned her, because she wasn't serious about the office she was holding. And she was more interested in preparing herself to run for president.
Yeah, the reports were that she would fail to read the briefing materials that she was given by the staff, and then she would lash out at the staff for her not knowing information. And meanwhile, she just refused to do her homework. This wasn't in right-wing blogs that just hated Kamala Harris. This was reported even in the mainstream about her terrible behavior as vice president. But now, okay, so we're one day into her likely being the Democratic nominee. She does this first appearance yesterday. And this line, this soundbite, by now, you've seen it, our audience has heard it. It's everywhere. The Democrats are like, you go, girl. Because of this, it's SOT 4.
Before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Protein bars can be chewy and dense, or so chalky that they crumble apart in your hand. But I want to tell you about the launch of Magic Spoon Treats. You probably know Magic Spoon for their popular high-protein cereal, right? It has more than 75,000 five-star reviews. Well, Magic Spoon has turned their cereal now into high-protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats come in 6 deliciously nostalgic flavors, including marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, blueberry, birthday cake, yum, and strawberry milkshake. Magic Spoon treats are a tasty time machine back to your childhood. You likely know Magic Spoon cereal, and now we are excited to bring you the news about the launch of their treats. Scoop up these new crispy, crunchy, protein-packed treats right now with 10% off just by going to magicspoon.com/MK or use the promo code MK when you place your order at magicspoon.com. Magic Spoon, hold on to the dream. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.